One of the bands that invokes a lot of passionate discussion on this channel, whether it be through messages, comments, or streams, is the band Trivium. Now, of course, some of the comments that I've made for a few of their albums in the past, no doubt is the catalyst for this, considering Trivium is a band that now has been going strong for about 15 years, and has certainly had a very interesting history. Throughout their 8 studio albums thus far, with no doubt more on the way, they have certainly captivated a fan base and have caused a couple of divides based on some of the decisions that they've made perhaps within the past decade. Now, Rank 'Em All is typically a place where my personal opinion kind of wins through. However, at times even I have to take the high road and I have to look at this band specifically through rose-colored glasses, one that's not just my own personal feeling. So it's time for us to rank 'em all with Trivium, and we're going to start with number 8. Number 8 is Vengeance Falls. Out of all of the albums that have been more modern for Trivium, this has been the one that sort of fell the flattest for me, the one that does not resonate or even base itself in my memory. There's very little in the way of recollection to what this disc was able to provide. It was kind of during a little bit of a dead area, or a dead era within this band's history, where they were kind of exploring with taking their material in a little bit more of a simplistic direction, either that or not feeling like they needed to be quite as complex. They had certainly achieved sales, but the album itself just felt like it was a bit misguided, a bit of a jumbled mess, and production and the team behind it definitely did not help. The result is just a disc that fell flat on its face and unfortunately started a bit of a streak for these guys where I felt a bit disconnected with the band. Number 7 is In Waves, a very similar story, but this one has a little bit more focus behind it. It's got the drive and it certainly has the rhythm. However, the strength of material by comparison to some of the other albums just causes it to always seem like a disc that is known more by its title alone. Whenever it comes to the actual material, it's decent enough, but it doesn't recollect itself to memory quite as nicely as some of the albums that preceded it, and that was a bit of a problem. Whenever it first came out, it felt a lot weaker than what we had gotten before it, and as a result, on many lists, it's going to fall near the bottom of the turf, or bottom of the category. Not too bad. I probably judged it a little bit excessively harsh whenever it came out, but this is still one that I put near the bottom. Number 6 is Silence in the Snow. This was an album that certainly delivered us a lot of promise with its opening singles, but whenever we got the whole of it, felt very much, again, like a misguided, jumbled mess. Trivium felt like a band that was trying to do a little bit too much, like they were trying to potentially satisfy far too many different aspects of their fan base that had gotten trapped within the limbo of loving the old material or loving the newer material or loving what was in between, and they didn't really know how to properly channel all of that different energy in order to replicate or create an album that was able to deliver aspects of everything. So they tried to do that, however this one was just sort of jilted and tilted in weird different directions. The singles gave us a lot of promise, but the remainder of the album felt like it was a bit of a lie, and as a result, this is why this album is so low on the list. Certainly had potential, did not quite deliver on it. Number 5 is Ember to Inferno. This is one of the earliest, in fact it is the earliest tome that we have from this band, and it was a debut that was certainly memorable. It was one that caught the ears of a lot of people that were hauled up in the metalcore movement and the rise of new American metal, and as a result, Trivium became very much contemporary with groups such as Lamb of God or Bullet for My Valentine whenever they came out, and really became synonymous as part of a pack. And as a result, this created a very nice little scene, and Ember to Inferno showed that this band certainly had a lot of potential, and as a result, it's a memorable debut. Now, this also meant that there are 4 other albums that were much better than it, but that is a good thing also. It meant that their first leap was certainly a calculated one, but at the same time, they still had plenty of room to grow. They didn't blow their load on their very first album, and significantly declined from there. Number 4 is The Sin and the Sentence. This is the album that we just received from the band, and it was certainly what we hoped Silence in the Snow could have been, but it gave us even more than that. Silence in the Snow, like I said, was trying to blend all the different aspects of Trivium's discography, but failed in that endeavor. They tried it again with The Sin in the Sentence, with perhaps a little bit more of a focus behind it, and this time actually were able to place different genre or different eras of the band within the same song or within the same little 2 or 3 track idea in order to craft an album that felt a lot more cohesive and had enough memory to remind all the old fans of why they love the band, to remind those from the Shogun era why they love the band, and even something for the newer fans as well. And the most important part about it all was that it was well designed, it was well placed, everything felt like it was hitting right when it needed to, nothing felt like it was really going off of structure. So if this was truly meant to be just a tribute to the fans, a one-off idea finally done right, then well, I'm glad that we got it, because it was well designed and well executed. Number 3 is Shogun. Many of you are probably looking at me like, really? You're putting this at number 3? Some of you it's because it's not number 1, others it's because it's not number 8 or number 7, because you know what my review was like of that album. You know how much I am not really too big of a fan of Shogun. But whenever it comes to this album, I unfortunately do have to acquiesce to many of the masses. This is an album that is extremely lengthy, and as a result, I feel like it gets overburdened with its own fluff. The riff is very good, the ideas are halfway decent. I feel that whenever it came to this band, longer tracks were something that certainly could suit them. However, too much of a good thing was certainly where this album kind of disconnected from myself. However, with most of you guys, with most of the fan base, this is the album that you connected with almost instantaneously and absolutely adored this as a modern riff fest that had great solid idea work, that had a terrific concept, not to mention great building blocks whenever it came to the music itself. So as a result, you guys win this round. I absolutely can't compete with that anymore. Number 2, though, is Ascendancy. This is a terrific follow-up to their exciting debut, and it was able to push this band even further over the limit. And I love what this album does because it's a disc that is able to take the ideas and the elements from the first album and go further with it. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel. They didn't simply try to, make another wheel. They instead tried to make a better wheel, as though they were Goodyear and they were manufacturing a New Year's model. And as a result, Ascendancy comes forward as an album that still isn't quite at the peak of that maturity level of a band, but still for a second album is a certainly very admirable sophomore offering. Not to mention, this was an album that was able to deliver single-like songs that were able to gain them some radio play, and if it wasn't on the radio, then it was being played in places such as Hot Topic or Spencer's, getting them even more attention. More people asking about who this band was and what they were all about, wanting to buy t-shirts, wanting to buy the records, wanting to go to the shows, and wanting to be a fan. The Ascendancy is a great pillar for this band, for their future, and certainly helped secure them as a band that was going to have quite the fan base. And number 1, the Crusade. This is the disc that absolutely sort of cemented this band as a long-running metal name. This was an album that I felt without it, they would perhaps have had the risk, or ran the risk, of sort of fading away into obscurity or not really gaining the traction that they did. With the Ascendancy and Crusade duality of albums, they were able to really push themselves over the top, and they did it at the right time. They peaked at the right moment, when the entire genre or the entire scene was really peaking with some of these new bands that had come out during the first period of the 2000s in the new wave of American metal movement. So with an album such as the Crusade, every song felt like it was popping. We could definitely tell a transition in this band, that they were going to be willing to explore a little bit more, perhaps on their next record, which would end up being Shogun. And we also saw that this group was not afraid to take risks. They were certainly going to also explore with some material that perhaps wasn't quite as direct as what you got from Ember to Inferno or Ascendancy. This was a delicate balance, something that they crafted very exquisitely, and as a result, this album is number 1 on this Rank 'Em All list for the band Trivium. Now, I want to know your list, and I probably know how most of them are going to start, and that's fine. Opinions are like assholes. Each one of us have one, and each one of us is one. And that's the best part about it. I love talking about music, and I'm okay with being wrong in the eyes of many whenever it comes to Trivium, because we all have our separate tastes. But I do want to know what your list is from 1 to 8 whenever it comes to Trivium albums. Rank them all. So let me know that in the comments below. And also scope out the link in the comments below if you want to become a guitar player, perhaps just like a member of Trivium or your other favorite band. There is a tool down there that will certainly help you start your journey to that dream. So be sure to scope that out top of the description box. I'm CoverKillerNation, and I'll talk to every one of you guys next time. You take care.